My name is Chad Ball. I'm the Deputy Director of Police. I'd like to take the time to thank some dignitaries. And before we move on, I'd like to thank the person here tonight who helped set the foundation for this police department. And all the successes that we see today are because of John Santamaro. Thank you. With that, I'm going to announce some dignitaries and some retirees that are here with us. If you would, please wait till they rise, and when they're all up, we'll give them the applause. Wayne County Commissioner Melissa Dobb. Chief of Staff Dan Sinners for Senator Dana Palinki. Township Supervisor Pat Williams. Township Clerk Michael Sechrist. And Jack, his son. Township Treasurer Diane Slavens. Township Trustee Anne Marie Graham Hudick. Honorable Judge Mark Slavens, if he's here. Township Trustee John Anthony. We also have some retirees before we give the applause. Phil LaJoy, former Township Supervisor. We talked about John Santamaro. Laura Santamaro, if you all would rise, please. Keith Lazar in the back, retired police officer. Thank you for being here. Retired police officer Randy Rankin. Thank you, if everyone would. If everyone here would rise, put your hand over your heart. We're going to post the colors. We have Shiley Angel Bretson today. She's going to sing our national anthem. Thank you.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we've watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
If you would, everyone have a seat. Thank you again for being here. Our administrative team would like to thank each of the family members and friends present today for the sacrifices that you allowed your loved ones to make for our community. The expenses and toil in the family has well been worth it. Our police department has been able to accomplish remarkable things, from intense 911 calls to the most complex investigations Southeast Michigan has seen in 2018. We have thrived as a team, and as a regional partner, we have, I believe, at least 22 police officers from other agencies here, and we work hand in hand to provide great service to Canton Township. I'd like to everyone, especially the Canton employees, to reflect upon this last year, then think about where you were at when you started with the Canton Township Police Department. Think about the problems, the complaints, the cases, and the successes that you've been a part of. We are privileged to serve and be the Canton Police Department for Canton Township. Our future is bright. We will continue to advance and develop as a community partner with our Canton community. We know our service contributes greatly to the success of Canton Township. What we do is relative to what we have before us. Given those terms, there is no one in this law enforcement community that we work within that measures to our success. Ask any one of us that gets to experience this great place to work. I am fortunate to work with our police officers, our PSSOs, and congratulations to each of our members of our police department. I love working with you and for you. Congratulations again. All right, I'm going to call up. Thank you. I'm going to call up Deacon Pat Conlon. He's going to do the invocation for all of us. Thank you, Deacon.
Thank you. It's always an honor for me to be with you. To say that we live in unusual and trying times, I believe, is an understatement. Our society is divided on many issues. Many people are angry, and everyone wants to point a finger and blame someone else for their situation. All too often, that anger, that animosity is directed at law enforcement. The media is quick to criticize. Even our leaders or would-be leaders are eager to point the blame at someone in law enforcement. And unfortunately, many people accept this and buy into it and believe it to be true. Not tonight, not here. Tonight we come together to honor members of this department and other departments. We come together to say thank you. In the last 7 years that I've been associated with this department, I have seen countless examples of kindness and compassion, overwhelming concern for the well-being of others, and many acts that go far beyond what is required or expected. And unfortunately, those things don't make the evening news. But that's what we're here to celebrate tonight. The concern and the caring that so many have for the members of this community. And so with that in mind, please join me in prayer. Good and gracious God, we thank you for the gift of this day and for the opportunity to gather together this evening. Help us to be aware and open to your presence among us as we celebrate the achievements of the men and women of this department. We lift up in prayer our families and friends and those in our community who are this day in need. Bless those we have served today. Bless those we will serve tomorrow. We ask you to grant continued success to our efforts, to guide us always, and to help us always to be the best we can be. Help us to remember that responding to the needs of others is the highest calling and the reason we do what we do. Remain with us, O God, now and always, and bless this evening's event. Amen.
We take the opportunity to introduce our Public Safety Director, Josh Meyer.
Thank you. Good evening. I want to welcome you to the Canton Police Department's 33rd Annual Awards Program. We have many deserving public safety professionals to recognize tonight, so I'll keep my comments brief. 2018 brought with it a host of challenges and unique incidents that thrusted our department into action. In typical Canton fashion, our officers, dispatchers, and support staff responded with the kind of professionalism and dedication that is representative of our agency. A bank robbery with hostages, school lockdowns on a campus with nearly 6,500 students, complex investigations that took our officers overseas, 2 shootings, and cold cases that our officers and detectives have never given up on are just a glimpse of what our team has addressed in 2018. Together, we drafted a comprehensive strategic plan that will carry us into the next 5 years, and there is no doubt it'll contribute to making this department better. We celebrated promotions and lost some great officers to retirements. We hired new officers that are carrying on the Canton tradition of service. Police officers across our great nation continue to be the target of close scrutiny, ambush-style attacks, and recently being doused with buckets of water simply for wearing the uniform and doing the job of their chosen profession. I will likely never fully understand what it means to be a police officer because I am not one. But what I do understand is how blessed I am to serve and lead some of the very best public safety professionals in this country. You have continuously proven that there is no challenge that we cannot handle together as a team. Police officers make sacrifices every day to do this job, and unfortunately, sometimes they make the ultimate sacrifice in service to their community. Tonight, we have an opportunity to recognize you for your commitment and the sacrifices you make. An opportunity for us to thank you. 2 words you don't hear enough. I will leave you with this thought. When you rise tomorrow, rise with passion and purpose. It is our passion and our purpose that defines our character and justifies our existence. I have 2 Director Recognition Awards. If the following people could come up, please. Deputy Director of Police Chad Baugh, Deputy Director of Fire Chris Stockline, Deputy Police Chief Craig Wilshire, Deputy Fire Chief Jamie Strasner, Executive Assistant Barb Caruso, and Secretary Denise Bima. The Director of Public Safety takes pleasure in presenting a 2018 Director's Recognition Award for service set forth in the following. In early 2018, I established a collaborative team to discuss the task of creating public safety's new 5-year strategic plan. The initial decision to be made was do we outsource this enormous project or do we handle it from within? Unanimously and unequivocally, this team response was to handle it from within, citing the most effective plan we could develop would be one driven directly by the aspirations and expertise of those who live it every day. The team wanted to ensure the final product was developed with realistic goals that align with the needs of our department and the community. We received invaluable feedback from the employee group as well as our external stakeholder group, and their participation was vital in developing this multi-year plan. I relied heavily upon this team, and throughout the planning process, their enthusiasm and engagement was unparalleled. This was months and months of work sessions based on extensive research and assessment of our current initiatives and goals. Countless conversations were had to accurately capture our vision, mission, and values, and the end result was truly a collaborative effort that we all are extremely proud of. As part of our CLIA accreditation process, the final document was submitted to the compliance service member who stated it was an impressive multi-year plan, one of the best he's ever seen. I couldn't agree more. This team has demonstrated dedicated service and untiring commitment toward furthering the development of this organization and members alike. The department would like to recognize these individuals and thank them for their exceptional service and invaluable contribution they have made to the Canton Public Safety Department. The second Director Recognition Award is for Sergeant Eric Kolke. He gets that a lot. Director of Public Safety takes pleasure in presenting a 2018 Director's Recognition Award for service set forth in the following. Sergeant Eric Kolke has been a member of the Canton Police Department since 1996 and has been instrumental in creating and implementing the department's active shooter protocols and training. In 2002, Sergeant Kolke identified the need for active shooter preparedness for both public and private sector. That year, he was certified by NTOA as an active shooter instructor and is recognized leader and subject matter expert in this specialized field. Sergeant Kolke used his vast knowledge to develop action response plans and standard operating procedures to be utilized during a crisis response for the educational institutes, daycares, and businesses of Canton. He empowers the community with knowledge and demonstrates the need for continuous advanced training and procedures to diminish the community's risks. Sergeant Kolke recognized the vulnerabilities that exist and the unique set of challenges the Plymouth Canton Community School District faces to enhance safety and security within our educational environment. Active shooter exercises are conducted yearly, but in 2018, Sergeant Kolke coordinated a full-scale active shooter exercise with the school district that included multiple jurisdictions, police and fire departments, dispatch, and local hospitals. It was a great opportunity for the department to test the effectiveness of our policies and evaluate our response. Sergeant Kolke assisted in development of the rescue task force that is used for active shooter and high-risk incidents. The task force is a mixed resource that utilizes law enforcement and paramedics who meet a specific tactical need. This task force enables our firefighter medics to make entry, locate, and treat victims as officers continue their search for a suspect, providing immediate life-saving interventions. Sergeant Kolke motivates by example and is a determined, dedicated team member committed to his profession. He has devoted countless hours on and off duty to strengthen and advance the education skills of the Canton Police Department. When interacting with the community, fellow officers, or other agencies, Sergeant Kolke does it with the utmost skill, credibility, and professionalism. The continued success of the Canton Police Department is a direct result of the significant contribution and willingness to provide outstanding service from Sergeant Kolke. Now I'd like to bring back up Deputy Director Baugh.
If you would, Brian Zinzer, come on up here. Brian Zinzer's our 2018 Police Officer of the Year. Congrats, Brian. The Director of Public Safety takes pleasure in presenting the 2018 Officer of the Year Award for service as set forth in the following. Officer Brian Zinzer was hired as a patrol officer with the Canton Police Department in July of 2009, and approximately 5 years later was assigned to a 3-year position with Western Wayne Criminal Investigations, specifically assigned narcotics. During this time, Officer Zinzer gained invaluable experience as an investigative work, and his knowledge was increased immensely with his police experience there. Officer Zinzer continuously demonstrates strong work ethics and willingness to assist with any necessary task to get the job done. He's basically a go-getter who takes the initiative in performing his duties. In 2017, Officer Zinzer returned to patrol from Western Wayne Criminal Investigation and utilized his increased experience to undertake the K-9 officer position with the police department. Officer Zinzer's vast experience in identifying suspected drug offenders and illicit drugs is evident by the quality of work he produces as our K-9 officer. In fact, many of his arrests stem from routine traffic offenses that lead to cases involving drug use or possession. In July of 2018, Officer Zinzer conducted a traffic stop in which he seized a sizable amount of methamphetamine from an individual that he later used as a confidential informant. Due to this informant, numerous suspects were identified and 40 grams of fentanyl were recovered. Officer Zinzer should be recognized for his personal motivation, excellent teamwork, and exemplary job performance he continues to demonstrate. Congratulations, Officer Zinzer. Our 2018 Civilian of the Year Award, Mark Hook, if you would, please come up. The last time I saw Mark Hook was a couple hours ago. He's pushing a car for a civilian that was in the middle of the roadway, so they wouldn't get run over, so thanks. The Director of Public Safety takes pleasure in presenting the 2018 Civilian of the Year Award for service as set forth in the following. Mark Hook initially began his career as an ordnance officer with Canton Township's building department. In 2006, his position was relocated to the Canton Police Department, and he became one of the first ordnance employees to transfer to this position. Ordnance Officer Hook consistently exhibits an all-out personal effort in performing his job duties. He is always prepared to face a challenge and take on complex job assignments. During his tenure, Mark has been tasked with implementing extensive research and enforcement on large-scale projects throughout the township. Mark always delivers excellent customer service throughout the community. In fact, he has used his own equipment on his own time and removed bushes and debris from an elderly woman's yards so she could have access to her back porch. Mark regularly proves himself to be a team player and model employee. He is patient, diligent, and dedicated to serving the public. Mark is basically, just like Brian, a go-to guy who is always willing to go above and beyond to assist others for our community. Thanks, Mark. All right. I'm going to read the first Departmental Citation Award, and this is for Officer Seifert, if he would come up. What did you say? The Director of Public Safety takes pleasure in presenting a 2018 Departmental Citation Award for service as set forth in the following. On January 1st, 2018, dispatch received a call from a man whose Ford Mustang was stolen from in front of his house. Moments later, Officer Seifert observed a Mustang stuck in a snowbank near Ford and 275. The driver managed to maneuver the vehicle out of the snow and accelerate onto Ford Road before Officer Seifert could reach him. Not long after that, dispatch informed officers that the stolen vehicle may have been involved in an accident at Ford and Hicks Roads. Officer Seifert obtained permission to leave the area and proceed to the accident scene. Upon arriving to that location, he identified the suspect and began to place him under arrest. However, while attempting to handcuff the suspect, a struggle ensued and the suspect broke away. As the suspect started to flee, a citizen who was sitting in his vehicle at the time exited the vehicle and extended his arms out to prevent the suspect from getting away. The suspect made a quick turn to change directions, but slipped on the ice. As the suspect attempted to regain his balance, Officer Seifert tackled him to the ground. Due to Officer Seifert's persistence and determination, the suspect was ultimately apprehended and charged with motor vehicle theft, reckless driving, and driving with a suspended license. Congratulations. I'd like to turn the podium over to Deputy Chief Wilshire.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming tonight. This next award exemplifies the partnerships and cooperations we have with other agencies and within our own agencies. So if you could bear with me, I have many names to read because of the magnitude of this event and the amount of people that it took to bring this one to a successful conclusion. So can I start off with Lieutenant Michael Kennedy, Lieutenant Joseph Biley, Sergeant Greg DeGrand, Sergeant Ed Johnson, Sergeant Eric Kolke, Sergeant Aaron Mickey, Sergeant Dan Traylor, Sergeant John Wallace, Officer Pete Alestra, Officer Alex Aquiline, Officer Lua Araj, Officer Jeff Besesson, Officer Jason Blickensdorf, Detective Matthew Burt, Officer George Duncan, Officer Jesse Dunlop, Officer Mark Evans, Officer Adam Falk, Officer Brandon Hayford, Detective Eric Kalidas, Officer Joseph Kaimig, don't want to lose my place here, Officer Darren Myers, Officer Brianna O'Connor, Officer Jace Pasioko, Officer Jeff Seifert, Officer Sergeant Adam Schulman, Officer Eric Thompson, Officer Michael Titterington, Officer Ethan Walsh, Detective Jeffrey Zajac, Officer Brian Zinzer, Ordnance Officer Mark Hook, Ordnance Officer Sean Skinner, PSSO Lacey Burnt, PSSO Kathleen Johnson, Deputy Fire Chief Jamie Strasner, Firefighter Matthew Nemcheski, Firefighter Mark Franco Plumbo, Emergency Manager William Hayes, Executive Assistant Barbara Caruso. Now for the people from outside the agency. Oh, sorry, actually, let's go with the Deputy Director Chad Baugh, Retired Officer Randy Rankin, Officer Jason Singleton, PSSO Hannah Flores Pedraza. Can also have Captain Thomas Goralski, Captain Ron Tagg, Lieutenant Mark Buckberry, Lieutenant Andrew McKinley, Lieutenant Mike Mockridge, Lieutenant Eric Zimmerman, Sergeant Bob Arnowski, Sergeant Matt Clemis, Sergeant Christian Emmerich, Sergeant David Finanzo, Sergeant Brian Love, Sergeant Alex Schultz, Sergeant Amy Smith, Sergeant Sean Stanchina, Sergeant Scott Sampansky, Sergeant Justin Thompson, Corporal Todd Donaldson, Corporal James Ford, Corporal Lou Wilmoth, Officer Joel Anders, Officer James Barb, Officer James Bahas, Officer Brad Fitzsimmons, Officer Anthony Hall, Detective Mike Hinkle, Officer Robert Kern, Officer Paul Kremensky, Officer Ken Laus, Detective Jeff McFarland, Detective, now Sergeant Joseph Pike, Trooper Jeff Rosinski, Officer Jordan Short, Officer Abe Slayman, Officer Colin Williams, Firefighter Michael Authier, and Firefighter Mike Valdez. And I'm not through yet. Officer Jason Hayes and Richard Constantino. You guys can all move up a little closer so everybody can see you.
Ron, I got room up here.
So again, as you see, this was a major event that occurred within Canton Township, and we have 3 different awards. There's a Department Citation, there's a Certificate of Merit, a Accommodation Award, and a Civilian Accommodation Award. So on January 25th, 2018, members of the Canton Police Department, the Special Operations Team, and the Community Response Team responded to a bank robbery in progress at the Citizens Bank on Canton Center Road. Per the caller, the suspect was armed. 5 employees and a customer were still inside the bank. Moments later, Officer Rankin and Singleton arrived on scene as the suspect was actually attempting to exit the bank. He noticed the officers and retreated back inside the bank, at which point in time we had a hostage situation. The Special Operations Team was activated and arrived within 15 minutes, which is an incredible response time of the call out, and the responding officers quickly set up a perimeter and established a ready response team in the event that the gunman attempted to leave or begin firing shots. While the majority of the Canton police officers were actively monitoring the bank situations, we had to rely on mutual aid from other jurisdictions to help us handle the normal calls, routine calls throughout the jurisdiction. As the situation escalated, PSSO Flores and the rest of the dispatch gained contact with the suspect and maintained communication until relieved by Deputy Director Baugh, who continued holding a conversation with the suspect while waiting on the hostage negotiation team to arrive. The emergency management planner, Will Hayes, assisted command with coordinating resources and observing the conditions. In addition, Richie Constantino vacated Rosie's restaurants and allowed officers unlimited access to the facilities with plenty of food, waters, and beverage, which were very helpful in this situation. After approximately 4 hours of negotiation, the gunman released the hostages and surrendered to the police. Due to the quick response and excellent teamwork displayed by all individuals, a potentially deadly situation was brought to a peaceful end. Thank you very much for all you did on this day and the commitment that you have to this organization and our community. Thank you very much. All right, now the challenge is to find your seats. Madam. I will now turn the podium over to Lieutenant Kennedy.
Officer Lamar Frederick. The Director of Public Safety takes pleasure in presenting a 2018 Life-Saving Award for services as set forth in the following. On April 3rd, 2018, dispatch received a call from a caregiver whose patient stopped breathing, but unfortunately, the caller was unsure of their location. Once the address was determined, Canton police officers and firefighters were immediately en route to the scene. Upon arriving at the location, Officer Frederick observed an unresponsive male lying on a table, so he quickly began administering CPR. Moments later, the Canton Fire Department arrived on scene and were able to regain a pulse. The patient was immediately transported to a local hospital for further treatment and evaluation. Officer Frederick's prompt response in administering CPR to the patient played an essential role in saving the individual's life. And next, I'd like to introduce Lieutenant Jim Harrison.
Good evening. I'd like to thank you all for coming. If I could have Officer Detective Joseph Keimig come up, please. While they're making their way up, the Director of Public Safety takes pleasure in presenting a 2018 Commendation Award for service as set forth in the following. On September 4th, 2018, Officer responded to a call concerning a 14-year-old female who was threatening her father and younger siblings. While identifying himself as a caseworker with Child Protective Services, he stated he was there to check on the children's well-being due to reports of them living alone. The father claimed he lived with the children, but he's a truck driver and is away a lot. He further explained that his 21-year-old daughter stays with the younger children when he's unable to make it home. While inside the residence, Officer observed the children's bedrooms, but did not see a room for the father. She also did not observe any men's shoes, jackets, or other articles of clothing in the home. Officer interviewed the 14-year-old, who stated her mother had moved out and her father remarried. She further explained that her father lived in a larger house with their stepmother and half-brothers. While Officer Even confronted the father with this information, he insisted he lived with the children and that his daughter was a liar. He further accused his daughter of having an intimate relationship with her sister's ex-husband, and he wanted her removed from the home. Officer persisted in determining the truth. She canvassed the neighborhood and spoke to as many neighbors as possible. Every neighbor she interviewed said there were 2 small boys and 2 teenage girls living at the home, and rarely did they see any adults around. One neighbor stated the boys asked to use her phone, and she overheard them asking another person to bring food. A couple days later, Officer Even made a visit to the father's other address and spoke with his new wife. While visiting her home, it became apparent that the father was living with his new family. After hearing inconsistent stories about the family's living arrangements, Officer Even prompted a follow-up investigation and advised Detective Keimig of the situation. Detective Keimig arranged for overnight surveillance to confirm the children were being left unattended at night. At approximately 8:30 p.m., cameras were directed on all the doors, and the house was monitored throughout the evening with no activity. At 6:30 a.m., the children began to exit the front door to go to the bus stop. After the last child had left the home, Detective Keimig knocked on the door and announced himself for 20 minutes with no response. Due to Officer Eden's persistence and Detective Keimig's investigative follow-up, the father was ultimately arrested and charged with child neglect, and the children were placed in a safe environment with a family friend. Congratulations and thank you. The Director of Public Safety takes pleasure in presenting a 2018 Life-Saving Award for service set forth in the following. On October 6, 2018, the dispatch center received a 911 call from a man whose wife had collapsed and was not breathing. Officer Barbosa was first to arrive, and he observed the female lying on the hallway floor. After discovering she did not have a pulse, Officer Barbosa immediately began CPR. Moments later, Officer Warnicki arrived on scene and continuously monitored the patient for a pulse while Officer Barbosa was administering chest compressions. Shortly after, the Canton Fire Department arrived on scene and were able to obtain a pulse. They quickly transported her to a local hospital for further treatment and evaluation. The husband later stated that his wife was receiving chemotherapy, which made her very weak. Their immediate response and quick reaction by these officers played a significant role in saving this person's life. Congratulations, Officer Wernicke. Good on that one. Next up will be Lieutenant Biley.
Afternoon. If I could have Detective Jeffrey Zajac and Andrew Coldhurst. Director of Public Safety takes pleasure in presenting the 2018 Commendation Award for service as set forth in the following. While assisting Officer Even, Detective Kymeg with a child neglect case, Officer Coldhurst, a school resource officer, believed that a 15-year-old daughter was being sexually exploited by her 27-year-old former brother-in-law. Due to the possible victim being a Plymouth High School student, Officer Coldhurst began to monitor her attendance. Soon became aware that the student had multiple absences, but her attendance record indicated that the absences were all excused. Officer Coldhurst decided to investigate the excessive absences, and he contacted the student's father. Her father stated that he never excused the absences and assumed his daughter was in school those days. Upon further investigation, Officer Coldhurst determined that the ex-brother-in-law had been using a cell phone spoofing app to duplicate the father's phone number and then claiming to be him. Although both parties denied any sexual involvement between them, Officer Coldhurst was able to later confirm his suspicions. Detective Zajac was assigned to further investigate the case, and he began by conducting a digital forensic examination of the suspect's phone. While searching the suspect's timeline of events, Detective Zajac noticed that the suspect was deleting a search history and certain messages from the phone. Nevertheless, he was able to recover the suspect's recent hotel searches and the fact that he was still connected to one of the hotel's Wi-Fi. Detective Zajac went to the location and spoke with the hotel owner. The owner's record showed that the suspect rented a room, and he allowed Detective Zajac to access the security cameras. While reviewing the recordings, Detective Zajac observed the suspect renting a room at the front desk and then entered the room with a female. He saw no further activity until the following morning when they exited the hotel room. Officer Coldhurst was shown the video surveillance, and he was able to positively identify both the suspect and the student, and the suspect were later arrested and charged with criminal sexual conduct. Thank you, Detective Zajac. Could I have Officer Jace Paciocco, please? The Director of Public Safety takes pleasure in presenting a 2018 Life Savings Award for service set forth in the following. On December 12, 2018, Officer Paciocco heard a loud noise and then observed a vehicle that had just crashed into a tree. Officer Paciocco ran to the accident and found the driver unconscious with his foot pressing on the gas pedal. The vehicle was continuing to accelerate into the tree while a thick cloud of smoke surrounded the vehicle. Officer Paciocco discovered that the car doors were locked and used his baton to break the passenger rear window. Officer Paciocco gained entry through the window and climbed over the seat to put the car in park and unlock the driver's door. Officer Paciocco then exited the vehicle and then pulled the driver to safety. The driver was still unconscious, so Officer Paciocco had to drag him away from the smoke and out of harm's way. Once the driver was safely away from the smoking vehicle, Officer Paciocco checked his vital signs, but was unable to get a pulse. Officer Paciocco quickly performed CPR until the fire department arrived on scene. As a result of Officer Paciocco's immediate response and critical reaction, the driver regained a pulse and was transported to a local hospital for care and treatment, where he recovered. Thank you. If I could have Lieutenant Kennedy.
Thank you again. This is another rather large award, so there'll be a nice group of people up here. We have 9 unit awards for 2018. Rather than read each award separately, we would like to recognize and honor all unit award recipients for their meritorious service and outstanding courage during hazardous situations. The Director of Public Safety takes pleasure in presenting 2018 Unit Commendation Awards to the following people: Lieutenant Mike Steckel, Lieutenant Pat Sullivan, Sergeant Mike Andes, Lieutenant Joe Biley, Sergeant Dave Isle, Sergeant Aaron Mickey, Sergeant Joe Mullally, Retired Sergeant Dan Trailer, Officer Corey Altime. Please come on up as I say your name. Officer Melissa Andes, Officer Lua Araj, Officer Cody Barnes, Officer Dan Bergsma, Detective Matt Burt, Officer Brett Cheadle, Officer Andy Colthurst, Officer Jake Crittenden, Officer Evan Culberson, Officer Matt DeLong, Officer Joseph Dahl, Officer Jesse Dunlap, Officer Derek Graham, Detective Jen Gianola, Officer George Hall, Officer Ed Yoxt, Officer Anthony Johnson, Detective Eric Kalidas, Detective Joe Kymig, Officer Darren Kosick, Detective Jake Krogmeyer, Officer Caitlin Leclerc, Officer Jace Pasioco, Officer Robert Pasick, Officer Scott Porter, Officer Peter Passant, Officer Jason Singleton, Officer Brian Sostak, Officer Andrew Tauscher, Officer Greg Warnicki, Detective Jeff Zajac, Officer Brian Zinzer, Canine Officer Hank, Detective Jeff McParlin, Detective Josh Pike, Sergeant Josh Pike now, Detective Jeff Rasinski, Service Officer Alexis DeVetta, Service Officer Jacob Downing, Service Officer Lisa Heineman, Service Officer Alexandria Samuelkeezen, Service Officer Katie Strainer, and Service Officer Laura Wade. Whether answering 911 calls, responding to calls for service, initiating traffic stops, or conducting surveillance, these individuals have contributed significantly to the safe and effective outcome of extremely dangerous situations. In one instance, a male subject was attempting to carjack a vehicle, but the victim ran. The male fired multiple shots at her, striking her twice in the leg before fleeing on foot. A short time later, the suspect successfully carjacked another victim, and officers from Plymouth Township, Northville, and Northville Township assisted Canton PD with locating and arresting the suspect. In another case, officers were dispatched to investigate a house fire and determined that the resident's ex-boyfriend may have intentionally caused the fire. Detectives were later able to uncover threatening text messages and the ex-boyfriend had sent to her via cell phone. While driving to where the suspect was possibly staying, detectives observed his vehicle at the rest stop on I-275. In the last example, the officer initiated a traffic stop and detected an odor of marijuana emanating from the vehicle. The occupants were advised to exit and the vehicle was searched. While conducting the search, a lug nut wrench, a 6-ton car jack, landscaping bricks, and various other tools were located in the back seat. The officer advised the Special Operations Group of his findings, and a surveillance of the driver was implemented. During the surveillance, the driver and 2 other males were observed removing the tires from cars and then resting the cars on landscaping bricks. Those are just a few examples of the exceptional police work, solid investigative skills, and outstanding surveillance operations implemented by these officers, detectives, and public safety service officers. Officer Lamar Frederick, Officer Andrew Kelly, and Officer Jeffrey Seifert. That's what I thought. The Director of Public Safety takes pleasure in presenting the 2018 Lou Stevens Customer Service Award for services as set forth in the following. Recognized and awarded for meritorious service to these officers who during the past year received numerous acknowledgments for customer service by citizens, exemplifying the core values of the organization on a daily basis and delivering the highest level of customer and community service. The Director of Public Safety takes great pride in commending Officer Frederick, Officer Kelly, and Officer Seifert for their dedication and conscientiousness service to the community. Next, I'll give him a minute to get back to his seat, but I'd like to bring up Officer Jeffrey Seifert for our tribute to the Michigan Fallen Officers. In the interim, while I have a minute, I'd like to thank the committee that has put this banquet together. That includes Officer Seifert, Officer Hayford, Maureen Merrill up in the front, and PSSO Johnson. They did a great job putting this together, and we appreciate that.
I'm going to read a poem here written by Thomas Canton from Richmond, Virginia. Who cries for the cop walking his beat down a mean street where violent men hold sway, where life is cheap and death doth keep his tally day by day? Who cried for the cop when assault is made, when flashing blade and guns that shatter the night and scanner sound of officer down tells of his helpless plight? Who cries for the cop when ambulance wail tells a mournful tale bringing tears to a widow's eye? Who gives a damn when triggers slam and a brave policeman dies? Who cries for the cops with blood-stained shield as life doth yield, his labored heartbeat stops? Tell me true, I'm asking you, who cares? Who cries for the cop? Kind of a silly question to ask in this room here tonight, but in 2018, our Michigan law enforcement lost 3 officers. That's 3 officers of 163 officers that died in this country in 2018. The name of those officers that we lost, all from the Detroit Police Department, are Officer Glenn Anthony Doss, Jr., end of watch January 28, 2018. Officer Darren Maurice Weathers, end of watch February 13, 2018. Officer Fadi Muklis Shakur, end of watch August 14, 2018. In memory of these 3 officers and the other 160 officers that lost their life, we could have a moment of silence. Thank you.
All right, for those of you who haven't picked up your awards tonight, the table in the back, the awards are there. You can pick them up before you leave. I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight and supporting the Canton Police Department. To our fellow law enforcement partners here tonight, thank you for being here. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules. In closing, I want to thank our awards committee for putting this program together on such short notice. I also want to thank Maureen Merrill for her commitment to the success of our awards program. To my command staff, our officers, PSSOs, and support personnel, thank you. Thank you for what you do each and every day for our department and for our community and for each other. I would also like to thank our Township Supervisor and the Canton Cares Foundation for the donations that made this event possible this year. As we go tonight, please remember to be safe, take care of each other, and you're never wrong to do the right thing. Thank you. If I can now call upon Deacon Pat Conlon.
As this evening draws to a close, let's take just a moment to thank God for this time that we've had together and for all the blessings we have received, both in our professional and personal lives. Many days we are all so busy that we don't recognize the simple gifts and joys that are all around us. You look around the room and you see families and you see all these little children. We can never be too busy to recognize how God gifts us with the people in our lives. And so with that we pray. Most generous God, we thank you for this evening and for the gifts of family and friends, of community and colleagues. We thank you for calling us to the service of others and for the opportunity to make a difference in the lives of those living and working in this great community. As we have honored the achievements of members of this department, we ask that you fill each of us with the desire to be the best we can be, and that you give us the grace and strength to make that possible. We lift in prayer all the needs we hold in our hearts and ask for your blessings on our families and loved ones. Loving God, I ask you to hold all the members of this department close to yourself. Bless their efforts to help others and return them home safely at the end of each shift. And we offer these and all the prayers of our hearts to you, whose mercy has no limit and whose love is never ending. Amen. And may God bless us all.
At this time, I'd like to call the honor guard to withdraw the colors. With that, that concludes our ceremony. I'd like to thank our closest partner, the Canton Fire Department, who we're lock in step with as we protect this community. Thank you for coming out.